Descent of the Demon God. By Hanjo Wiolia. Chapter 145. Great Yokai. Part 1. 20 minutes ago. A dark and cold cave. Relying on the lantern he had prepared in advance, he was moving forward. It was the hidden 10th peak. It could only be entered through the heavenly mountain peak. As she entered the cave, Betrayal felt a strange chill on her body. Brrr. A tremor in her stomach. And she couldn't even figure out the reason. "Wife, are you all right?" "I am fine." As her expression wasn't good, he asked her with a face heightened with panic. Mak Wei Gang was expecting a treasure inside, and it wasn't long before they made their way to the innermost part. "Wife. Wait. What is it?" Mak Wei Gang stepped forward. She didn't understand why, but he picked up a small stone and threw it ahead. Pack. At that moment, the stone oxidized and turned into dust in the air. Lines of red light were created in the air. The defense technique? What stood there was another ordeal. Mak Wei Gang broke in cold sweat. This technique seemed terrifying. It was easy to get seriously injured. "Can you remove it?" "It won't be that difficult." As a woman who shared the blood of the ancestor who created it, she could take it down. However, it was impossible to completely cancel it. It will only be possible if Father comes. Although she had learned some things, she wasn't perfect. And a technique wasn't something which could be mastered in a short period of time. Whoa! When she touched something, red lines floated and then created something like an entrance. At that, Mak Wei Gang smiled. It was for this reason that he made her fall for him. "We can move now, my wife." Mak Wei Gang touched her lovingly. After walking in, the entrance of the cave, which seemed to be the final point, was revealed. The entrance was blocked by a stone wall. Rrrr. Betrayal could feel the tremor stronger than before. She didn't know what it was in the beginning, but now she understood. The pure energy is shaking around. Her father had the ability to recognize the energies, and she had learned that from her father. This pure energy was making these tremors. "Husband. I don't feel good about this." "What do you mean?" "We came all this way. There seems to be something dangerous inside." The trembling of pure energy means that the energy within that cave was bad. Something bad was lurking inside. But despite her warning, the man insisted on opening the stone door. After she realized that he wouldn't listen, she decided to open it. Grr. As the heat rushed out, the energy could be felt again. The door opened on both sides. When it opened up in such a strange way, the torch inside the cave lit up by itself. Whoa! The large cavity inside was enough to fill an entire peak. As they entered that place, the first thing which caught their eyes was the talismans. My God! Seeing that, Betrayal was shocked. On each talisman were written things for defense. She couldn't even imagine just how dangerous the inside was. This is bad. Too dangerous. She wanted to head out right away, but Mak Wei Gang found something and burst into laughter. Ha. I finally found it. He ran to the center of the cave. A rocky pedestal in a strange shape, with a 10-meter tall black stone statue standing there. Ceiling. What Mak Wei Gang saw was a shiny string of black whip around the statue. Unusually, the whip was so long that it wrapped the entire statue. Husband. Wait. But Mak Wei Gang stopped listening to her. No matter how much she pleaded, it was like the man couldn't hear her anymore. Tack. He grabbed the handle of the whip and pulled on it. Crrr. At that moment, an amazing thing happened. The whip around the stone statue of the large monster shortened, and the whip around the face, which was the last one, was exposed. Shh. And the beast's face was revealed. Fox? Mak Weigang was standing right ahead of the statue looking at it. The beast had the face of a fox. However, the corner of the fox's mouth, which was made of black stone, moved. Husband! Stop! She ran and tried to stop her husband, who kept moving close to the statue. However, at the moment she took a step ahead, the whip moved. Fortunately, the four legs were still tied. Whoa! No! Ha Betrayal couldn't even raise her head in the tremendous energy that was moving. A terrifying evil energy was suppressing her from moving ahead. Clenching her teeth and trying to pull Mak Weigang's wrist. Husband, please. We need to run. Please, please. But he didn't move. Flustered, she looked at him. Huh? His eyes were tinged in a golden light. This man was completely possessed with this fox's energy. Gold? The moment she saw the gold light, something flashed through her mind. She knew the beast in front of her. Golden hair. It was then. An abominable being. A creepy voice echoed around. Pang. Ack. An unknown force struck her. Ha Betrayal flew and rolled on the ground. Her innocent beautiful face was covered with blood in an instant. The upper body of this huge being was full of golden hair. Ah! And 9 tails were moving above the head. Seeing that, she ran to escape from the cave without looking back and closing the stone door. 9 tails? Fox? The elders who heard what happened inside that peak were shocked. A creature with 9 tails. The 9-tailed fox of the legend, Gumiho. Who would have imagined that a magical being, a legend, was trapped inside that peak? Jiang Cheongak asked with a serious voice. Mississippi. Did you say golden hair? Why yes. Brilliant gold. No. With trembling eyes, he looked at the peak which was roaring. What is it? Elder Jiang? Arkyang asked. Not a 9-tailed fox. Huh? Not a 9-tailed fox? From the ancient book, there was a monster which is said to have existed in the Yin dynasty. Yin? The Yin dynasty was very ancient. The great yokai has been called by many names through the centuries. Like Tamamonome, pale-faced scholar. A being that was once called yokai. And at some point, they turned from calling them yokai to monsters. It was said that the last trace of this monster was defeated by a man in Japan, but it didn't seem like the information was true. Our Jiang family stayed with the Ha family for generations. This is why I have heard from my father about the deeds of the ancestors. Then you. The ancestors say that this great yokai was trying to shake up the world, so people went to get rid of it. However, I heard that the great yokai had the power of an entire nation of Murim, and so unable to defeat it, they sealed it up. And it must have been residing in the Kunlun Mountains. It surprised Jiang Cheongak that the holiest place for them was where that monster was sealed. Come to think of it, it might have been the Lord's mission to monitor this monster. Is it that dangerous of a monster? Not just dangerous. This golden-haired 9-tailed fox is one of the 3 yokai. The ancient book on spirits mentioned 5 spirit beasts and 3 yokai. The spirit beasts were said to be born from the sacred nature, but this trio was different. Evil beings born from the worst deeds. Is this what the Lord talked about? The demon that the skies fear? All had the same thoughts. At that time, Ha Bekrayang yelled. How long are you going to talk? Are you going to let my husband die? At her words, the elders felt like they had to do something. Not that they were going to save that man, but at least do something to not let the creature walk out. Elder Song spoke. Let's do this. Elder Ark stays with the Lord and so will the lady. Let the rest of us head down there. He proposed splitting into two. However, Ha Baekryong objected and said she would follow them, but they didn't want her down there. I am the only one who can open it up, what could you elders even do to head in? They had no choice but to take her. Everyone, except for Ark Young, who was the least powerful among the elders, went to that peak. At the entrance of the sealed place, the elders looked at the stone door with tensed faces. Kwang! A loud roar from within. The cave shook as if it would collapse the next moment. Those who heard it felt pure fear. Such different energy. Even though the door was closed, they could still feel it. The elders looked at each other and nodded. Jayang Cheongguk said, "Miss, please open the door for us." Okay. When Ha Baekryong put her hand on the stone door, red letters were engraved on it and opened. Grr. The door opened once again, revealing the cave, but the shaking stopped. The shaking stopped. Huh? A musty smell, as if something had burned inside. Ha Baekryong, who was behind the elders, covered her mouth. The talismans. The talismans covering the wall of the cave were charred and ashes were flying around. The sight was appalling. Swish! As Jayang Cheongguk waved his hand with energy, the ashes were pushed aside and the sight ahead appeared. They saw something in the middle. A man with a black appearance, supposedly Mak Wei Gang, was holding something, and in front of him was a beautiful naked woman with her long hair flowing down. The woman was on the pedestal and seemed unconscious. What is th? Let's get Elder Mak out now. When Elder Song was trying to ask what happened, Ha Baekryong asked them. The elders went to the place that the lady showed, and if her words were correct, then there would be a golden-haired nine-tailed fox, not a naked woman. Elder Mak? Elder Hyang called for him. Looking at how he stood still, it seemed like he wasn't harmed despite the strangeness. There was no reaction. Puzzled, Elder Hyang approached and put his hand on his shoulder. Elder Mak, are you? It was then. Puk. Quack. Something protruded from Elder Hyang's back. Elder Hyang. What came out from the back was none other than Mak Wei Gang's hand, which was now holding the heart. Mak? Mak Wei. Elder Hyang, who was attacked, yelled until he fell limp. As the hot blood of the dead elder flowed on the floor, an astonishing phenomenon occurred. Whoa! On the floor with the shape of 8 trigrams, a red light flashed and then soon died. Shoo! It didn't end there. The heart Mak Wei Gang pulled out was presented to the naked woman in a very gentle manner. What the hell? The woman opened her eyes. The bright gold eyes of the woman were pleased. At that moment, the hair turned golden. Jayang Cheongguk mumbled. What? That woman is the golden-haired, nine-tailed fox. Whoa! He immediately called out invisible swords and tried to attack the woman right away, but something blocked it. Papak. Huge golden tail. It could block the sword? This being called Great Yokai had skills beyond what one could imagine. As he was shocked, something more absurd happened. Grr. The stone door behind was closing. Elder Song tried to move to that place, but another golden tail flew in and smacked him away. Yuk! Thud! He flew to the wall of the cave and blood gushed out of his mouth. With a voice full of fear, Ha Baekryong shouted, "Saw save my husband as promised." At her words, the golden-haired woman, no, the golden-haired nine-tailed fox, smiled. What was that? Hearing that, Jayang Cheongguk realized that something was wrong. He thought that she was telling them the truth, but it seemed like there was a deal between them. Miss! He screamed as he looked at her, but she turned her back towards them. Thud! The stone door completely closed, and the roaring sound started. She muttered to herself in a venomous voice. I did nothing wrong. She needs to be kept alive. If it means saving him, I will do anything. Elder Jiang's guess was right. She had made a deal with the fox in exchange for her husband and her own well-being. I have been locked up for a long time and need fresh blood. Pay the price and I will spare this person's and your life too. Originally, she was aiming to control this woman with that captivating energy. However, that didn't work because of that woman's bloodline, so she made a deal. This is the only way to save him. She was comforting herself until she heard a voice. What are you doing? She couldn't even hear the person approaching because of the roars. She looked back in shock. Who? A man with sharp eyes and a fair face in a black suit. It was Chen Yuan. When she came to ask for help, she didn't enter the Lord's residence, so she was unaware of his existence. Chen Yuan asked again. Why did you close the stone door? Confused, she spoke without realizing. The elders told me to close it as it was dangerous. She didn't need to make excuses as he was someone she didn't know, but she felt like she had to say something. In a cold voice, Chen Yuan asked. By the way, what was that scream about keeping your husband alive as promised? Ha Betrayal couldn't hide her shock. She couldn't understand how this man heard that. Chao. Chen Yuan looked at the door and said, open it. It was a command which made the woman glare at him. Judging from the noises, it was clear that the elders weren't dead and were fighting that fox. They had to die for the deal to close. I can't. What? Chen Yuan's brows rose. She felt intimidated by it, but she insisted. If I open the door, my husband will die. She wasn't going to open it. Chen Yuan asked in a low voice. This is the last time. Open it. This. As Unjaram's successor, she was always treated as the highest force. That's why she was annoyed at the way Chen Yuan spoke. She yelled. You. Do you know who I am? I am the only. Grab. At that moment, Chen Yuan grabbed her mouth. The grip was so tight that it let her think that her teeth and jaw would break out. As she was flustered, Chen Yuan spoke in a cold voice. Why do I need to know who you are? I clearly warned you. Open it. Who is he? It was then that she realized that this person was from the outside, and that he didn't care about her. Scared, she tried to say, if you harm me, I won't open the door. Only those of the Lord's bloodline could open it. Using that as an excuse, she tried to make sure he wouldn't hurt her. However, Chen Yuan said, Woman. Did you think I asked you to open the door because I couldn't? What? Ha Betrayal couldn't understand what he was saying. Chen Yuan waved his hand towards the stone gate with the sword. A black line appeared on the door and it cracked. How can it happen? At that, Chen Yuan spoke in a cold voice. Ark Young asked me to spare you just this once. Both her eyes trembled. A great energy was pressing down through her chest. But you let go of the chance so easily. Shoo. Flustered, she tried to wave her hand and beg. Jade just a little. Crack. Chen Yuan grabbed her lower jaw and pulled it from her mouth. Her jaw was ripped off and her screams in pain sounded strange. Quack. Shut up. Chen Yuan drew the sword towards the woman this time. As she staggered a little, her head had already fallen to the floor. Chapter 146. Great Yokai. Part 2. The moment the stone door closed, the great ordeal came for Elder Jiang and Elder Song. Quack quack quang. Each time the golden tail swung, it shattered everything. And the two elders constantly worked hard to just avoid it. It was the golden-haired Gumiho sitting on the pedestal and biting down the heart of Elder Hyang. Munch. It was a terrifying sight to see, but the Gumiho savored the heart with a noble face. So good. The corners of her mouth rose with satisfaction. The heart of Elder Hyang, who was very strong, had a greater effect on restoring her body. So nice. The golden-haired Gumiho ate the heart slowly and stood up. The black whip, which was still clasping around the naked woman's lower body, shone with a red light. How long can this hold me? Huh. She tapped the whip with her finger and the red letters engraved on it disappeared. Shoo. As the red letters lost their light, a smile fell on her face. As if relieved, she stood up. Release the whip. Mak Wei Gang, who was standing in a dazed manner to the side, pulled the handle, and the whip opened up from the lower body as it was now the length of a normal whip. Chuck. Ah. The golden-haired Gumiho's face was dyed with emotions. After being imprisoned for so many years, when she was finally released, she felt like she had the whole world. She smiled broadly. Ha 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 ha. She smiled until she stopped and looked at the whip in Mak Wei Gang's hands. Abominable thing. If it wasn't for the whip, the divine thing, she wouldn't have been imprisoned here. When she reached out her hand, Mak Wei Gang politely handed the whip to her. Gumiho took its handle with her right hand and the tip in her left. Let's break this. She pulled on the whip with both her hands. A whip which was pulled so much that it felt like it would break. But the whip was still fine. What? Gumiho's eyebrows rose up at it. Although she had her powers suppressed for long, she was still the great yokai. Because it is a divine thing? Then let's break it with my own body. There was a limit to the power she could draw from her human form. Now that she was freed, she can return to her original form and destroy that divine artifact. It was the moment she was about to turn into her original body. You monster! Take my sword. Shoo! Avoiding the tail, Elder Jiang raised two invisible swords to block and tried to stab her in the back with another. You are pretty good. It must have been quite a while. Someone who can block my tail. Weak. What? Elder Jiang hurriedly tried to move, but the tail was faster. It appeared from behind and tried to strike him. A little late, he would have taken serious damage. Pack. Quack. Another tail struck him from above. Two more tails slammed into his body at the same time. Bang! Elder Jiang's body slammed to the ground. A pit of 5 meters was formed. Qua. Even though he was protecting his body with internal energy, his insides were shaken. He wanted to stand up and move, but his legs gave out. As he trembled, he heard the voice of the Gumiho. A human heart with that strength must be delicious. She clicked her tongue. Should I eat you? Within the pit where Elder Jiang was slammed into. He lifted his head and looked at the woman who smiled with her tails moving around her. Weak. A clear sound of whirring, and a huge tail coming down to cut him up. Elder Jiang, move. Elder Song called out, but it was too late. All the martial arts he learned were of no use in front of this monster. Truly a great yokai. It was then. Slash. Pang. Ack. The scream of the woman. Elder Jiang opened his eyes to see her tail curled to the side. It was shocking that the tail wasn't cut, and he heard. I tried cutting it, quite hard. You? It was Chen Yuan, and he had a huge, invisible sword in his hand. Oh. As if angry, Gumiho groaned. She began to emit evil energy, which was filling the entire cave. What kind of energy? Elder Song, who was trying to avoid the tail, turned pale. He, who was a superior master, never thought he'd feel fear from this evil energy. I'll kill you. Human. 3 tails went for Chen Yuan at the same time. Shoo. All rushing for Chen Yuan, each hair on the tail was like a needle. Chen Yuan raised the sword. And cha-cha-cha-cha. 12 invisible swords about 10 meters tall arose in an X shape and crushed the tails. Oh God! Elder Jiang was shocked at it. The invisible sword was literally a sword with amazing energy. It would take great energy to grow the size of a sword, but he couldn't imagine a person freely making not one, but 12. This human is strong. Gumiho's expression changed. She looked down on Chen Yuan because she couldn't feel anything from him. She could never be afraid of a powerless man. But this man was different. I'll deal with you in my true body. Human. Gu. Her body was dyed in a dazzling gold color. The already explosive energy around her rose again. Whoa. Give me a break. Chen Yuan stretched out the sword towards the woman. Flame and ice chi surged from the invisible swords. A red and pure white beam of light went for her. Cha. Cha. It was a unification of attributes. Pachik. However, it was blocked by the golden energy. Even the unification of energies didn't pass through her barrier. This was stopped? What worked against an S-class alpha entity didn't work on this fox. This is a great yokai which has existed since ancient times. Chen Yuan heard about this from Ark Young. Reading the ancient records in his time, Chen Yuan knew about the spirit beasts and the yokai. The spirit's beasts are constantly reborn because they come from the energy of nature and then they ascend to heaven. On the other hand, these 3 yokai are born from evil feelings and have been a single being since the beginning. These catastrophes never died and only grew stronger. This is interesting. Chen Yuan smiled. Ever since he fell into the future, he couldn't even remember a time where he had a good fight. He couldn't even use half of his power ever since he came here, but with this golden gumiho, it seemed like he could go all out. Gu. The woman was now into her fox form. A giant fox of nearly 20 meters and majestic enough to be called a monster. It was so huge that it filled the entire cave. How did something like this exist in? Elder Song was terrified. The energy from the fox made him feel helpless. Even in a human form, the monster looked horrible, but in its true form, it instilled fear in everyone. Elder Jiang mumbled with a pale face. The demon that the skies fear has been awakened like this. The prophecy the Lord said had come true. But what could they, mere humans, do to stop this terrifying being? They were in utter disbelief. Shoo. This? There was dark and ferocious energy creeping in from somewhere. It was completely different from the evil energy of the gumiho. It was closer to the abyss. Demonic energy? Elder Jiang looked at Chen Yuan in shock. A black haze was rising from his body. The eyes of the gumiho were looking at him strangely. Chen Yuan stretched out his hand and said, "This place is too small for a fight." Whoa! At that moment, a sword with 5 lights appeared in the air. It was no ordinary invisible sword. What is that? 5 colors. Several different energies at the same time. A single sword which had the energy of all 5 chi at the same time. What made it possible was the sky demon energy which united it. Fat. Chen Yuan pierced the ceiling. And something amazing happened. Huang. The entire peak shook. Due to the strong vibrations which spread around, both the elders lost their balance and held on to the walls. Ah! Eventually, the vibration stopped and shocked them again. The cavity, which was dark, was lit up with sunlight now. Elder Song mumbled at that absurd thing he witnessed. Oh God, the peak is gone. The peak had completely disappeared. It was shocking to see the force, which seemed like it could even pierce the heavens above. He can stop it. Elder Song's face brightened with hope. He thought it was the end, but then realized that if it was Chen Yuan, then that fox could be dealt with. Wong. Chunma floated up and spoke to Gumiho. Let's do it right now. The place was too cramped for a proper fight. But something more unexpected happened. Wuong. Huh? Suddenly, the golden Gumiho's huge body was dyed in golden light once again, and the body shrank as it returned to human form. No one could understand why she was doing it, and her human form had golden tears in her eyes. What is this? Chunma frowned at her and asked. What are you doing? She burst into tears and flew towards Chunma while wailing. Lord Chunma. Chapter 147. Great Yokai. Part 3. A very long time ago, there were 3 great yokai which had existed since the beginning of Earth. The 3 yokai were born from the amalgamation of evil and grew stronger with wickedness and fear of living beings. One of them was the golden Gumiho. She appeared in the form of a human. Compared to the other 2, who focused on destruction, she was interested in the existence of humans, and she melted into the society as she enjoyed the chaos within. She would wander into one nation, destroy it, then head to another and do the same. In that process, she made several enemies. Outstanding swordsmen, shamans, and samurais. Everyone hated her. However, she was different from normal monsters. As long as she existed, she annihilated all those who challenged her without fear. But one day, the strongest enemy appeared in front of her. For the first time since her birth, she faced a crisis that could have killed her. Why? Why aren't you killing me? I am an evil being who wants you humans to die. Not interested. Funny human. He turned her into a corpse and said he was no longer interested in her. Then why bother fighting her and turn her life this way? You'll regret it. I will definitely kill you. If you can, do it. It was an opportunity for her to change, who only thought of humans as entertainment or food. The golden Gumiho, who recovered her power, visited the humans several times and lost many times. But each time she visited him, he would never ignore her and kept dealing with her, and soon she became interested in him. From his enemy, she turned into the protector of that person. It was so much better to hang out with him than fight him. She wanted to be with him forever until the day he said he was leaving. Why? Don't you know it is not impossible for you to live forever in this world? She tried to say anything to make him not leave. Don't go. Please, let's live together, you and me. A world without you means nothing to me. Forever is. Despite her earnest plea, he disappeared. There were rumors about him leaving or dying, but what was certain was that he didn't exist in her world anymore. After 10 decades, Gumiho realized that he was no longer in the world. I don't need this world. She thought that the world was meaningless without him. Deciding to annihilate everything and return to nothingness, she reconciled to herself and killed everything she could see. Until that man appeared and imprisoned her in Kunlun Mountains. For many years she vowed. If she could go out, she would kill everything. But something surprising happened. This darkness. Her heart was pounding. The ferocious yet darkness felt from this man was the same as the man in the past. Although the appearance had changed, she would never forget it. Lord Chunma. The golden Gumiho, with her broken heart, tried to embrace Chunma. Unable to understand her intentions, Chunma held out his hand and a huge invisible sword blocked her like a wall. Chunma. Me. It is me. What are you saying? Don't know me? Gumiho kept asking by pointing to herself, but Chunma couldn't figure out what she was talking about. But the word Chunma, which came out of her mouth, made him stay alert. Who could have thought that the name Chunma would come out from the yokai which was imprisoned in this place? Golden Gumiho. Have you ever met my ancestor? Ancestor? She, who was acting all ferocious till a second back, was looking at him with her eyes wide open. Chen Yuan, who realized she knew nothing, said, "I am the second Chunma." Chen Yuan. Second Chunma? The person you are talking about seems to be the first Chunma, my ancestor, right? The woman spoke as if she couldn't understand. What are you saying? This energy is unmistakably Chunma. You are him. Are you talking about sky demon energy? Sky demon energy? This is the energy I received from my ancestor. Chen Yuan obtained the energy from the sky demon sword, which was in the demonic cult's library. And now the energy was united in him. Elder Jiang, who heard that conversation, frowned. Chen Ma? So was Elder Song. Unlike Elder Jiang, who only cared for the Lord, he knew other stuff. Second Chen Ma? Chen Yuan? He doubted his ears for a moment. The man was the vice-chairman of Yongchun Group, and a demonic cult member. What was this second Chen Ma stuff now? Demon god Chen Yuan. There was no way someone who tries to be a great martial artist wouldn't know that name. The name of one of the few warriors who were called as the strongest in the history of Murim. Elder Song looked at Chen Yuan with trembling eyes, who was still talking with the woman. No, how can anyone other than Chen Ma withstand that energy? She didn't admit it. The sky demon energy from Chen Yuan was more dangerous than her energy. Liar. Sigh. Chen Yuan sighed. Both men were different looking, so he couldn't understand why this fox wouldn't believe him. The woman had a grasp on the energy, as she too was someone who has lived for a long time. You think I won't notice your energy? Please stop now. It was my ancestor you had met. He didn't want to deal with her anymore, but it wasn't the same for Gumiho. So in a cold voice, she spoke to Chen Yuan. You really want to act like you don't know me? I said it was my ancestor. Really, are you going to keep saying that? Wuong. As soon as she said that, her body shone in golden light again with 9 huge tails. If you aren't Chen Ma, you can't stop me, Gumiho said. At that moment, tremendous energy was concentrated around her and soon created a golden sphere, which was shot like a beam to the sky. Chuck. Quack quack quang. As it was released, it erupted, causing storms of wind in all the directions. Like a laser cannon. Chen Yuan grabbed the sword, and once again, the invisible sword with the 5 chi was formed. Chuck. Chen Yuan swung his sword towards the beam. The beam of light, which was flying to destroy everything, was split in half and hit the peak of Heavenly Mountain Peak. Quack quack wang. As a part of the peak was damaged, it shook. Elder Jiang, who watched that, was at a loss for words. The attack of that woman and the man who managed to cut it. I made a mistake. Chen Yuan frowned as he looked at the swaying peak. In that peak were Ark Young, Hu Bong and the Lord. At that moment, huge tails came from both sides of Chen Yuan as if clapping with both hands. Sh. Chen Yuan held the sword with his left hand. Then, another huge sword was born with an amalgamation of 5 chi. Huang. Chen Yuan blocked both the tails with 2 swords of 5 chi. There was a tremendous amount of pressure from the fox. Quack quack wang. The pressure was so strong that this peak, which had its top blown off, was still shaking. Growling. Yuk. What the hell? Both elders were pushed to the ground. Despite trying to resist it, they couldn't do much in front of the monstrous energy. A confrontation between a yokai and a heavenly master? Both which were thought to be legends? A battle of transcendental beings. They could see the damage these two beings could do. Quan. The golden gumiho opened its mouth as it caught Chen Yuan between its 2 tails. An energy sphere was being made ready to fire at him. It is dangerous. Elder Jiang shouted. Having pulled out 2 swords made of 5 chi meant that he was doing his best, which meant Chen Yuan could no longer do anything. However, cha-cha-cha-cha. A beam of light pierced through the air. At that, Chen Yuan held out the hand which was holding the sword. JJKKKK. The space in front of Chen Yuan immediately twisted like a whirlwind. And a huge black hole was created into which that beam was sucked. Swoosh! That? The fox's eyes fluttered. The Chunma she knew was only able to block things with the one sword he had. She never knew that her attack could be stopped this way. Then how about this? The fox jumped. Thud. Quang. Hook. This. As she jumped, the peak shook and the elders moved away to avoid being hit by the rocks, which bounced up at the fox's movements. Pop-pop-pack. Thousands of golden hairs on the fox stood up and moved for Chen Yuan. Swoosh. A single hair couldn't be blocked by the elders, but now, 1,000 of them were coming for one man. Is that the golden gumiho? As the fight was too destructive, Ark Young, who came out of the residence, asked. He saw Chen Yuan in the air, and numerous golden thorns-like things going for him. That is? He wondered if his teacher could stop it, but Chen Yuan moved his invisible sword of 5 chi into the air. Whoop! At that moment, the sword which was mid-air and flying slowly, crumpled and vanished. At that, Chen Yuan smiled. It is the first time I am using it since I looked into the universe. Papa-ha-ha-hack. Something unbelievable happened. In the twisted space, a tremendous amount of energy came out and formed into a tornado, which swept away the golden needles aiming for Chen Yuan. Is this the power of a heavenly master? Elder Jiang was at a loss for words. He learned of the power a warrior in heavenly master level has, but this was too much. Is this Chunma? Even the fox frowned. The power this man was using was nothing like the power her Chunma used. Chunma used demonic power, but this man, the power he was using was difficult to understand despite knowing it was close to chaos. Chen Yuan spoke to the golden gumiho. If you dealt with Ancestor, you would understand this too. He raised a sword. And the sword was dyed with black. Creepy. A weird energy. A force which could cut through anything. Supreme Sky Demon Sword? The fox's eyes trembled. That sword, an absolute secret weapon which could cut down anything in the world, a sword technique that Chunma made before he disappeared. She had seen the power with her own eyes. Chuck. Chen Yuan drew a vertical line towards her. The black line split the air. I need to avoid it. Whoa. In that brief moment, the golden gumiho turned to the side by emitting out golden light. The size of her body shrunk. However, she couldn't completely avoid the speed at which the black line cut the air. 2 of her tails were cut. Chuck. Kayak. A shriek from her mouth. 2 tails, which had never been cut since the immemorial times, were cut. The pain was indescribable. Swoosh. She turned into her human form. But unlike before, she was looking young and short too. From a mid-20s woman, she now looked like an 18-year-old girl. Yokai energy. Her 2 tails were cut off. Her yokai energy in her 9 tails was reduced and the core, called Fox Orb, had lost its energy too. Shoo! The touch of something sharp pressing her. Chen Yuan's invisible sword was on her neck. Actually, Chen Yuan was planning on killing the fox. But since he found out that she had a relationship with his ancestor, he was hesitating if he should or not. Ignoring the sword, the woman asked. Really not Chunma? Both eyes were trembling. Chen Yuan sighed. I am Chunma, but it is a title I inherited from my ancestor. When she heard Chen Yuan's words, her eyes reddened. And his voice, the man she liked, his voice rang in her head. I won't disappear. The one who will succeed me will become another Chunma. I don't know when that will be though. That means they are just your descendants. He smiled at her words and said, "This is how humans live forever." The strong nostalgia. A single tear fell down the pure white cheek of the 18-year-old golden gumiho. With a red face, she said to Chun Yoan, "No. You are undoubtedly Chunma.